we're still in the story about Joseph. If you remember the boys, or Joseph's brothers, had left, and Joseph had kind of set them up to test them. Some people might say he was being mean to them, but Joseph, you have to remember, these guys sold Joseph into slavery. Joseph was a slave. And yes, God was in control of it, but they still did him wrong, okay? God didn't do him wrong. They did him wrong. Here we see human responsibility and the sovereignty of God, okay? God is sovereign. God was in control of everything that happened, exactly the way it happened, down to the minutest detail, and there was nothing that happened that took God in any way by surprise. That's the part that's so hard for so many people to understand. There is nothing that happens. There's nothing that we can do that takes God by surprise. We do nothing that God doesn't know before we do it that we're going to do it. That we do nothing that God didn't know before the beginning of the world, before he set the world in place. He already knew everything that we would ever think, say, or do in our lifetime before he put the world into place. Okay? God knows the beginning from the end. He knows every bit of it. It's like when you look at a blueprint, you can see how that house is going to be built step by step in front of you. We have to turn the pages of the blueprint to get to see the whole thing. God doesn't have to do that. And we have a hard time with that because in our minds we're like, well, how is that possible? How could he see it's been all this time already? It's been, well, the thing is what we fail to realize is that God is not trapped by time. Okay? God doesn't operate inside of time. God created time for our benefit, not for his. He does not, God does not operate inside of time, and he's not trapped by it. Okay? So he was in control of this. Know that. But at the same time, some people would then say that, well, then what you're saying, that makes God the author of sin. No, I am not saying that God is the author of sin. God does not sin according to James chapter 2, and he doesn't cause anyone else to sin. When we sin, it is our own wickedness that's inside of us because of the fall. Okay? It's our own wickedness. When we sin, it is held totally against us, although, and a lot of people fail to realize this. But if we go on further over in the Bible, when the children of Israel came into the land of Canaan, God used them to destroy the wicked people in the land of Canaan, right? In the same way, when the children of Israel sinned against God, he gave them chance after chance after chance, year after year after year. But when God come to a point where he said, okay, I'm not going to let this go on anymore, he then used another nation to destroy the children of Israel. And all of that, God knew all of it. He knew what was going to happen, exactly what was going to happen. And it was all for us to understand something. That God is sovereign. Okay? And that we would never ever choose God. We would never seek God. God lived with these people, but they never did seek him. Anyway, so I'm getting off course here. Joseph's brothers did what they did, okay? It's held against them. But at the same time, God was in control of it. God was in control of them selling Joseph into slavery. Now, I know that might boggle, but those are twin truths. You can't separate the one from the other. The only reason you can't understand that, okay? In other words, let's put it this way. The only way you will come to Christ is if God causes you to. But at the same time, if you don't come to Christ, it is held totally against you. It is your responsibility. And the fact that you can't understand that is your downfall, not God. Okay? It is your fallenness. It is because the reason we don't understand that, there are two twin truths that are preached throughout the Bible. Okay? Human responsibility and the sovereignty of God. Alright, so now the brothers are back in they had left. They Now Joseph will reveal himself to his brothers here. So, alright. Let's read the story. Genesis chapter 45, verse 1. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried, "Have everyone go out from me." So there was no man with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard of it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" Can you imagine what had to have gone through their mind at this moment in time? I mean, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? Wow. But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. I mean, this was the person that had a dream that they would bow down to him. Then they, because they were angry because he had this dream, they sold him into slavery. Talked about killing him. And now, all of a sudden, in a moment, they realize that the dreams have come true. That they have bowed down to him. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come closer to me." And they came closer, and he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now do not be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life." Joseph realizes, he gets it, he realizes that, yes, you all sent me, you sold me into slavery, but don't be grieved because God sent me here. In other words, Joseph is forgiving him. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant in the earth, and to keep you alive by a great deliverance. Now therefore it was not you who sent me here, but God, and he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and Lord of all his household, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, "Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You shall live in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children, and your children's children, and your flocks, and your herds, and all that you have. There I will also provide for you, for there are still 5 years of famine to come, and you and your household, and all that you have, would be impoverished. Behold, your eyes see, and your ears, and behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth which is speaking to you. Now you tell my father of all my splendor in Egypt, and all that you have seen, and you must hurry and bring your father down here." Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. He kissed all his brothers and wept on them, and afterwards his brothers talked with him. And when the news was heard in Pharaoh's house that Joseph's brothers had come, it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, do this, load your beasts, and go to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households, and come to me. And I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Now you are ordered to do this. Take wagons from the land of Egypt, for your little ones, and for your wives, and bring your father, and come. Do not concern yourself with your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. So Pharaoh took up the call too, didn't he? Once again, we see the sovereignty of God. God working in the heart of Pharaoh and his servants to cause to happen what he will. Okay, so why is this so significant? The reason this is so significant is way back when God made a covenant with Abraham, and he cut the animals in half, and God passed between the two halves, remember? And he put Abraham in a trance way back then. This is several generations ago now. God said that your family will go to Egypt, and they will be slaves there. Do you see the hand of God? He predicted it, and now it's happening. God is causing it to happen. We get to see God's decree, and we get to see how he brings it about. And how he uses the people he uses in the world to cause it to happen. Not only did he use Joseph's brothers, he also is using Pharaoh. Okay? He's using the land of Egypt to sustain, or you might say to, well, you can say sustain or whatever, but to nourish and sustain the forefathers of Jesus, the line of Jesus Christ. Does that make sense? The line that Christ will come through. Then the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each of them he gave changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver, and 5 changes of garments. To his father he sent as follows: 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and sustenance for his father on the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and as they departed, he said to them, "Do not quarrel on the journey." Then they went up from Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob, and they told him, saying, "Joseph is still alive, and indeed he is ruler over all the land of Egypt." But he was stunned, for he did not believe them. When they told him all the words of Joseph that he had spoken to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Then Israel said, "It is enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go see him before I die." Wow. So, here's another thing that you can...
I thought he died before you went.
Jacob? No. Jacob died in Egypt.
Okay.
They carried, matter of fact, when the children of Israel went back to the land of Canaan many 430 years later, okay, they carried the bones of Joseph and Jacob. No, they carried the bones of Joseph back. But Joseph went back and buried Jacob in the land of Canaan in this story here yet. Before we end Genesis, Joseph makes a trip back and buries his father. Okay? So, yeah.
For some reason I was thinking he died before he made it to Egypt.
I think he dies in, it might be 50 that he dies in. Yeah, chapter 50. The very last chapter is the death of Israel.
48 is the last day of Israel.
Huh?
48 is the last day.
I know, but he doesn't die until 50. The death of Israel. So we're getting down to, we got like 4 more chapters. And then we'll go into the Exodus. Which is just as exciting in all honesty. There are some places in Leviticus and Numbers that can get a little bit dry, but we'll forge on through them. But do you guys, I guess what I want more than anything is I want you guys to see the sovereignty of God. the decree of God first. Remember way back when y'all remember where I'm talking about, when God passed between, he had Abraham cut the animals in half and lay them on, and God passed between them. And he made a covenant with Abraham. And that covenant that he made with Abraham, we see the decree. God said it would happen, he decreed it, okay? But he caused it to happen. That doesn't mean, and so many people are like, well if he caused it, if he caused Jacob's brothers to do it, then he caused them to sin. Well, he didn't cause them to do it. God sustains everything they do. God gives them breath. And when he pulls his hand of grace back just a little bit, just a little bit, when he pulls his hand of grace back, you got to understand, okay? He knows exactly what they're going to do. Exactly. Okay? He doesn't cause it. He passively steps back and allows to happen because he knows exactly what our wicked hearts will cause us to do. Does that make sense? Because if something took him by surprise, then he wouldn't be omnipotent. He wouldn't be any of the omnis. Okay? He knows the beginning from the end. His word tells us that. Okay? He is completely sovereign and knows over everything that happens. Knows it beforehand. Okay? He's totally in control. Alright. Any thoughts?
That's one of my favorite chapters.
One of your favorite chapters? When he lets them know. All this time.
It's like, when are you gonna do it? Just tell him.
Yeah, just tell him. He was. Who would have thought? If you don't know the chapter, he's sold into slavery. He goes into prison. Who would have thought there was going to be a reckoning? Let's put it this way. When he finally tells them, it's kind of like a load off of your chest. Kind of like, what must those brothers have thought at that moment? No way.
I just can't believe they didn't recognize your own brother.
You gotta think he was young when they left.
He probably looked like an Egyptian, so he probably had his different style clothes, different haircuts and whatnot.
Right. He looked like an Egyptian ruler.
And also, he was young. This was how many years later after he was sold?
Well, it had to be a number of years because he gets sold into slavery, and then we have the story of Judah with Tamar. Judah gets married to a woman. He has 3 sons. Okay, the one son grows up and marries Tamar. He dies, and the next son marries Tamar, and he dies. Then time goes by after that, and Judah's wife dies, and then Judah goes into Tamar, thinking she's a prostitute, and gets her pregnant. And all this had to have happened. It was that baby. One of those babies, wasn't there twins? It was one of those babies that is in the line of Christ. What a lot of people don't realize is that God was still sovereignly in control of all that. Every bit of that. It was supposed to be Judah and Tamar. Okay, that was his plan. It wasn't an accident. There was never ever a woman that got pregnant unless God caused her to get pregnant. That's what people don't understand. And if there's a baby in there, then God put it there, and I don't care if it got there because of rape or because of how it got there. If it's there, God put it there. And it is the only good thing maybe that there is because of what happened. Okay? Alright, any other thoughts?
I wonder what his thought was. His brothers, when he went and told his father that Joseph was alive, he's thinking, I wonder if he's thinking you told me he's dead. You know what I'm saying?
Well, actually, they didn't tell him he was dead. What they did is they told him that they took and killed a goat, okay, or lamb or something, a kid, I think it says.
Yeah.
And they dipped his tunic in it, and they brought it to his father and said, Do you recognize this? Does that belong to your son. And so they didn't say, they just let him assume. And Joseph was like, Jacob was like, well, that's my son Joseph's coat. And so he assumed a wild animal had gotten him and tore him to pieces and ate him or something. I guess I would have done a little bit more questioning. I would have been like, okay, where did you find it at? Let's go see if we can find any remains. But then when they told me that he is still alive, I guess I would have been asking some more questions. Well, wait a minute, how did he get to Egypt?
That's what I was trying to get at.
But whether that happened or not, we don't know. It doesn't say. And so, we just have to trust that God was in control.
That is why I just kind of thought about that.
Alright. 3 minutes? Okay. Alright. Let's close in prayer, guys. Father God, thank you for this day, Lord. Thank you for your love, for all that you do. Lord, I just pray that you be with us today. Help us to get the things done we need to do. Lord, I ask that you help us that we truly have a longing to reach the lost of this world. Pray that you work in our hearts, our lives. You break us for the lost. And I pray, Father, that you give us the strength, the courage, take the fear away, that we would not be ashamed of the gospel, as Paul said, Lord, that we would, and I pray that you work in our hearts and to realize that when we go out and we share the gospel, we talk to the world, that you are still sovereignly in control, that if someone is saved, it's because you saved them. If someone comes to know you or comes to trust you, have faith in you, it's because you gave them that faith, because you drew them and caused them to know you, that you are sovereignly in control of everything that everyone does. Help us to realize your sovereignty